a lot of times, we come in with both goals. I want to run my best and I want to lose weight. So we can work in strategic weight loss days, but strength training. I always say strength training is more important than your running. Why? Because running, you're going to do it. But strength training is your testosterone, your ability to build muscle, your metabolism. The way you keep weight off is by having muscle, your metabolic powerhouse.
Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. Today, I am super excited to welcome back Louise Valentine, who was my very first interview guest, who I didn't already know personally, way back on episode 26, almost a year ago. So it's an honor to have her join me again to get caught up on her incredible accomplishments in the last year and some new and exciting strategies and considerations for female endurance athletes, in particular women 35 and beyond who love to run and maybe juggling multiple goals to lose weight, lean out while still enjoying their sport. From debunking myths in the industry to achieving a zero injury rate, Louise is here to dispel the misinformation and empower female endurance athletes. If you're ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about women's health and fitness in the context of endurance sports, you'll want to listen all the way through to learn exactly what to do to excel at all your goals without injury as you age. To catch you up on who she is, Louise Valentine is a best-selling author, published researcher, and award-winning expert across the sports medicine, exercise science, holistic health, and performance fields. She owns breakingthroughwellness.com, where she empowers active women aged 35 and beyond to mitigate hormone changes and maximize health, body composition, and running with less stress. If you can't stand hormones wreaking havoc on your health, fitness, or endurance performance, and are ready to understand simple ways to quickly restore energy, improve body composition, and or run your best, Louise's courses and coaching are for you. As the 2023 American College of Sports Medicine Practitioner of the Year, congratulations, Louise is leading the way in helping us simplify and apply the best female age 35 plus specific strategies to unlock your best with less stress. Louise, it's great to have you back. How are you doing? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome. Congratulations on your success throughout the past year, too. It's amazing to see this community you've grown, amazing listeners interested in the nitty-gritty science and feeling their best.
For sure, for sure. We were joking before I recorded how when you were on, I was still recording out of a closet on a TV tray, but nonetheless, the passion was there. We had a great conversation. It went by in a blur for me at the time because I was so nervous back then. And now, we've grown into our respective areas. So it's been about a year since we spoke. And in that time, you've accomplished a lot. You've earned this ACMS Practitioner of the Year award. Tell us about that and tell us what you did to earn that honor.
Yeah, it was, I sort of felt like I was taking a leap when I submitted my application, looking at last year's winner. It was the head of the Obesity Institute, Effective Weight Management in Greece, I believe. So I was looking at all of these top performers across the world and wondering, do I fit into this award position? And I just shared my story as a military spouse, this dynamic career that I've had, as well as my personal story overcoming osteoporosis, hormone challenges, and really looking across the spectrum of health, fitness, athletic performance, holistic health, and blending these strategies all throughout my career, whether I was helping pro athletes or now women, just like me, feeling stuck with these hormonal changes and wondering, wow, I work out really hard. I still want to feel my best. This vibrant, strong, fit self. I don't want to lose this. In fact, I'll go out kicking, screaming, and running, trying to feel my very best, despite all these hormonal changes. So it's such a thrill to win.
Yeah, and it definitely is inspirational. We talked about your story last time, but even the thought of being able to pursue multiple goals and get multiple results at the same time, because there is a concept or a principle of periodization of, exclusive goals, going after one at a time, and how you can't have this at the same time as you have this. And we've seen that mold broken in a few areas. For example, power lifters used to always be big, fat guys, right? And now you see that they're leaner, they can be healthier while still competing. And so in your area, you work with women, with hormones, with endurance. So another thing that you've been doing is working on a textbook or contributing toward a new textbook based on cutting edge science. It's with other weight loss experts
Mhm.
for sports medicine for fitness professionals. Um, can you share with us any of the secrets that you're including that the fitness industry hasn't heard yet? Speaking of breaking the mold.
So, this is, again, looking at the active woman. We might assume someone who is struggling with excess weight is not active. But what about those women who are active? They're trying their hardest, they're dialing in their nutrition, and they're still not seeing results. So I share in particular a case study of a client that I worked with who was living with excess weight and trying to run ultra marathons and lose the weight at the same time. So, what did that look like? If you're a fitness professional and you're working with someone who's so dedicated to their running, yet they still want to, protect their metabolism, they want to see body composition changes. How do we do it? And then, in particular, those hormonal changes, age 35 and beyond, we've got a heck of a hard time ahead of us. So, I share insights into the journey and practical takeaways for professionals so that they can, when they have these ambitious, active women living with excess weight, let's be effective and let's strategize so it's specific to their life and provides best results.
So what? Let's peel that back a little. Get specific. What's one thing that everybody assumes is the case, and that you can't have this at the same time with that type of woman? A woman who's very active, has the excess weight, but she's gotten to the point where there's some things conspiring against her, whether it's hormones or something else, and she wants to have all the things. Right? What is one thing that you face on a regular basis you want to dispel here?
So I think it's the excessive calorie reduction
Okay.
that we see. And it's just, diet culture tells us that we need to be low calorie. We log into MyFitnessPal, we see, oh my gosh, if I'm eating over 1,200 calories, I'm I'm failing. And in this instance, we have to remember and use the lens that you are an active female. My goodness, you are a calorie burning machine. And when you go too low calorie, it is extremely counterproductive. Your body will fight that weight loss like like no
Mhm.
other. So to your point of that periodization, if there's, coming to the understanding we can try things, but sometimes we might need to off cycle from something like an ultra marathon. Can we do a half marathon instead
Mhm.
and maybe focus on some strength building, restoring some metabolic damage in particular when you're coming from a very low calorie past?
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you said that because the listener needs to hear it over and over again, especially directly from women, because I'm not a woman, but I do tell women this all the time, out of compassion that we generally want to eat more. That's like the bane of many of our issues, and men too. But you and I were talking about how even over the last year, some of your I guess the audience you're addressing has become more and more clear. And I also on the podcast, if you were listening over time, you'd realize it's more toward an energy first approach of like increasing that stack, increasing the metabolism, not trying to lose weight. And at the end of the day, when you want the physique or you want the weight loss, it's actually going to come pretty easily without all the stress and without all the negatives. So I love that you're saying that. Is there, what about on the running side specifically? Are there things that are fighting against each other when it comes to the energy needs and the running in the context of, say, physique? Because you said that is an important goal people want. What would you say? Is there anything competing there? Or is there a way to make them align?
Yeah, absolutely. Avoiding things like fasted training. We need to
Mm.
have that hormone and the hormone balance and metabolism on fire. So being very strategic. No fasted training, absolutely not. No carb restriction. We are looking at protein timing. We're looking at pre, intra, and post workout fueling. We are not taking calories away from that. Going into those sessions fueled and in a very strategic way, looking at that person's life, other stress levels, other levels of toxins they're exposed to. Stress could be environmental, it could be dietary. So there's so many components into protecting the hormones and the metabolism first and foremost, to your point of energy first. Because without hormones, without energy, without a metabolism, you're not building muscle, you're not leaning out, you're not running your best, you're going to be injured, bloated, and gaining weight.
Absolutely, 100%. So I love it. No carb restriction, avoid fasted training, all the things I'm constantly getting questions about. Like, but fasted training works for me. Well, really, does it? Let's take the whole context and experiment with a little bit more energy here. So, because you work with athletes who want to perform well in ultra marathons, endurance sports, triathlons, and again, the conflicting goal thing, what about where does, say, fat loss fit in? And again, we're not talking about calorie restriction per se, but at some point there's a dedicated, hopefully short duration, as easy as we can make it, minimal hunger kind of situation where you still lose the excess body fat if you need to. What does that look like?
Absolutely. It's these very strategic strength training. So looking at working with those hormonal changes, making sure you're lifting heavy enough. Because if you're doing all the light weights in the world, you're not going to be seeing those body
Mm.
composition changes, ensuring it's very specific to the individual's goals. So we're seeing those body physique changes as well as injury prevention, because you still want to
Mhm.
be a strong runner too. But then also just looking at ensuring that all pieces of the puzzle are together. So you have the nutrition day to day, and then the strategic calorie reduction in small doses so that it doesn't impact hormones, recovery, and performance. To say that you would never have a day
Right.
where you don't feel your best is a lie. Uh,
Sure.
we look at all the different strategies, though, like even carbohydrates, cycling, the super low calorie, all the different diet trends out there, they're working against us in this particular circumstance.
Mhm.
It's actually exacerbating things like our progression towards perimenopause. That was my exact story. I hit early menopause in my 20s, and it was like, what?
Mhm.
Are you kidding me? In women runners, they're running their way to perimenopause
Yeah.
when they're trying to have all of these competing goals.
So when you apply this to a client, what kind of results have you been most proud of that you've seen and probably learned from as you put these pieces of the puzzle together?
It's been absolutely amazing because my academy that I have for the women that I coach is called Badass Breakthrough Academy. It has literally been built from listening to clients and what is getting the best results. So I went in with so many assumptions as a professional, and the best takeaways have come from real women. So looking at ensuring that they have the nutrition, lifestyle, and training strategies are just so critical.
Yeah, it makes sense. And listening to clients, that's kind of like where I know you put out a lot of content on social media. And if I were to guess, probably almost every single one of those is based on a question you've had to answer for a client, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. So one of the hot trending topics right now is female specific exercise strategy, right? And even I get the daily question, but how do I train if I'm a woman over 40? And it's always a specific age cutoff and that I'm a woman, and I don't mean to be cynical at all because there are differences to men and women. There's differences with age. Um, but there's a lot of misinformation and confusion out there, right? To the point where almost people get a defeatist attitude when they come in asking this question, and you want to really lift them up and give them the hope that there's plenty that they can actually do to empower themselves. So, what are the common myths and mistakes you see in this area, right? And then how do you educate our listener and the clients and empower them to break through the noise and find out what works best for them?
Yeah, I just think it's incredibly overcomplicated. And we look at things like the optimization of lab work as an example. So
Yeah.
we might see individuals who just come in, they're like, Louise, what lab should I ask my provider for? What should we look in sorts of testing? Can you review all of my labs? And you could spend all the money in the world on a salivary cortisol test. What's it going to tell you? You're stressed,
Yeah.
particularly in the morning. We could have told you that.
Yeah.
If you look at your lab work, it is a point in time. It is simply blood work. It is but a day. So, I mean, then you can get expensive and get a SpectraCell. You can look into the nutritional composition of your cells to see how
Mhm.
it's actually absorbing a lot of money. And we just get in the weeds of this optimization without taking the step back to look at, are you doing the simple day to day things that matter most? And when the women that I coach come into my program, they're like, it's so simple because you're simple with the things that matter most, you're consistent, you drive incredible results. But getting caught up in all of the weeds of the science, I'm a scientist telling you don't get
Right.
caught up in the weeds of the science. I did for way too long. I've done all the things. I started in the NFL. I was all into the hyperbaric chambers and
Mm.
cryotherapy and give me the red, anything. I'll take this supplement, that. And no, it did nothing except put me in complete hormone damage, ended with osteoporosis, that hypothyroidism, gut health disturbances, precancer, you name it. So I have been the train wreck where a lot of your listeners might feel like they are, but I can stand here as hope and living proof that you don't have to live like that. And at any age, both myself and my clients, all the way through age, I think 56 is the oldest woman who's gone through my academy, reversing bone health, reversing hormonal health. And it's simple, whole food. It's nothing crazy.
Mhm. It's true. It really comes down to like this really short checklist. You could just, of course, we know things are simple, not easy. Just give them the sheet and say, do all these things. But we know it's not just that, right? I agree that we overcomplicate things to the point where, like in the evidence-based space, we have to start pulling out scientific papers and citations and all these other things. And I love doing that personally, but the person I'm talking to just wants to understand what to do. And the way you put it with it kind of being in alignment with your body, I guess you didn't say that explicitly, but that's what I'm getting from it. Where if there's anything that's off, anything that's like forcing you in a direction that doesn't feel right, calorie restriction does that, right? Energy restriction does that, where you just feel like, can I really live this way? That something's off. And I think what you're talking about is once you understand those simple things and put them in place, they work. Where do people get hung up though? Like if everyone on this call or everyone on this podcast, if I said, Louise, tell us the 10 things we have to do, and it's perfect, and they're not going to do them. Why is that? And what's the gap?
And it's finding what's specific to their goals, their
Okay.
body's needs, and their lifestyle. So what is so ironic about what you just said is women in my program go through 5 initial weeks of learning. At the end, you get a checklist. It's called
There
the
you
Thrive
go.
After 35 checklist. But what is so critical, to your point, is I used to just do a couple sessions. I know, because we need to get you to practice this in every single day life. When
Mhm.
it doesn't work, you come back to me. 20 years in the field, I have got so many strategies we can pull from. It is not one size fits all. And anyone who tells you that it is, that is a line of BS. They are too close minded. You need to find that outside of the box thinker who will help you fit it into your life.
There you
So,
go.
working with pros all the way through and feeling completely burned out and broken, chronic disease diagnoses, Olympians,
Mhm.
either side of the spectrum, we need the same exact thing customized to us, our body.
Yeah, for sure. What's the classic phrase? Like their methods are many, principles are few, or something like the principles are the checklist, but how you get there for each individual is going to change drastically. And some may apply more than to others. So, speaking of women with the hormones, you mentioned that, and now we can talk about maybe physiology. There's changes that definitely happen that affect your health, your fitness, your performance. I'm going to say in the ways that the healthcare and fitness industries maybe gaslight in some cases, or they put their hands up and they say, oh, well, you're just getting older. That's how it is. I've seen that with the women in my life. And you mentioned the signs of perimenopause. I'm guessing some people put up their hands. I'm just going to guess that some doctors did that. It kind of pisses me off, even though I'm a guy, right? Because I've seen firsthand how it affects people and it makes them think like there's no hope.
Mhm.
So, how can women understand exactly what's happening in their bodies based on this age related process and then take control over their health?
Absolutely. And that's again where I think we're just so in the weeds with the science. Let's simplify it. What is happening? Age 35 for most women is when hormones start to decrease: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So let's make that the underlying theory of women, right? Even, and I have seen women even with estrogen dominance, maybe breast cancer, um, what are some other things? PCOS.
Mhm.
But it comes down to this idea that we need to support our hormones. We need to help the hormonal balance of our body. How do we do that? It's something that I refer to as a stress tipping point. There's many factors that go into that. In the past, we used to assume when a woman had, something like low bone density, hormonal health disturbances, problems with her period, that was called the female athlete triad.
Yeah.
Well, part of the reason why I am a leader in the field now is because we're rethinking that. I've been compared to the founder of that as leading the way in the field, but it's really rethinking, how does gut health play into that? How does your day to day stress management, stress meaning exposure to things that you eat in terms of ingredients that influence hormonal health and gut health, looking at day to day stress and how you manage it. And then this is the game changer: stress of exercise. So many active women don't realize that exercise strategies need to change, or your hormonal health, you will be essentially draining it and expediting your way to perimenopause. And that's where you go to the provider, like I did. And they said, well, you just hit menopause early. I don't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not okay. And with the fact that people think that this is okay, genetically, we might be mildly predisposed, but we also have control over our genes and how they express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that action, finding the providers who are leading the way, who do have the strategies from the nutrition, lifestyle, and exercise management side, put it all together, your hormonal health can be just fine.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's empowering. I like how you mentioned epigenetics in there, that we can change our genetics. We can change it's effectively a way of changing our DNA to simplify it. Right. But I think of that in terms of strength training, right? Why is it possible to build a bunch of muscle that you've never had before in just a few months? Isn't that kind of an adaptation? Well, you can do the same with your hormones, right?
Before my coaching session with Philip, I was really struggling with staying consistent with my nutrition. Philip really showed me the importance of being consistent day to day. He also helped me see that it's not a bad thing to take a rest day. He really helped me get in that more positive headspace of a rest day being something really good for me. I've been doing this for a month now, and I'm finally starting to see some progress in my numbers, and I'm really excited about that. And I just appreciate so much the help that Philip has given me. He's always willing to answer questions, to offer resources that are totally free and very, very helpful. So I just want to say how much I appreciate that. Thanks, Philip.
The stress tipping point. Really nice way to put it, because when you mention stress a lot of times and you just leave it at that, I don't know if you've seen this. It's kind of this nebulous thing, right? Well, stress. Okay, life stress, my work, my family. And you're saying it goes far beyond that. It's all the things that place a load of stress on our body, gut health, right? The things you eat. I think that's great. Even alcohol, like I've learned a lot myself lately about the effect of alcohol on hormones. Even though we can talk about, enjoying in moderation and tracking and all that, what about the stress load it brings you? And then exercise, of course, with again, especially it's in your realm with the endurance, because you want to support that, but not let it be a stressor. So actually, I do have a question about that. So somebody who's doing ultra marathons, we're talking 100 miles generally, right?
Yep, I have some of my ultra runners.
Yeah.
No 200.
So, they have to put in a lot of miles in their training, I imagine, and then the event itself. But not even counting the event, just training wise, how do you prevent that from being more stressor than it needs to be?
Yes, and this is where the training plan is essential. A science-based training plan that works with female physiology. And this is again where there's not a lot in the field where we're accommodating for hormonal health. So again, another reason why, I'm winning awards in the industry right now and leading the way is thinking through less is more. And how do you train for an ultra as a woman in perimenopause in your late 40s without draining your bone health? And the way I phrase it too is that endurance exercise is hormone draining by nature. The reason why we have a taper week before a race is to restore our hormones. So essentially, you are draining your hormones the entire time you're training as a byproduct of what you want to happen in your physiology and getting those training adaptations. So we need to be really strategic not to do that too much. So we're really rethinking the training plan. We really rethink it in terms of days per week, adding more rest and recovery. When you go strong, you go strong. You can still PR. Women in their 50s are getting faster in my program. Like you were talking about those results. That is something that I'm incredibly proud of. And I'm talking sports medicine physicians, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and they're like, I just don't want to end up like my patients. Can you help me? Like, that is powerful. That is powerful to hear you say that. And then look what you're doing now, taking charge of your health. Like, blows my mind. I'm just so proud of the women that I coach. You could tell.
Of course, yeah, and I'm sure they love being able to have that clarity, the clarity that you can control what happens to your body, even if you intentionally put it through a little bit of stress, which you have to train for these endurance events. And I like how you put it, kind of draining your hormones, and it's a deliberate thing because you're trying to get some other result, but then you're allowing it to recover, which is kind of like the acute stressor of a fat loss phase, right? Or even just the daily acute stressors, like when we train lifting weights or whatever, we're stressing our body, but in the long run, you get a benefit out of it and then recover. So that's pretty cool. So most of your clients are runners, and injury is a concern as well for people. You said you had a 0% injury rate for the women 35 and over. I think that's impressive. I want you to put it in context of like what the normal statistics are. And then I think where people are getting it wrong a lot of times, where athletes become more injury prone with age and not using the right strategies for it. Like you said, taking control of your health and knowing your physiology. So what kind of injury prevention strategies do you use to talk about that?
It's both from a nutritional perspective as well as the strength
Okay.
training. And I would say actually to the science-based training plan. So again, that less is more training, very strategic, not overloading the body. And then we're looking at running specific strength and conditioning. So we need to think through why runners get injured in the first place. Let us quad dominant athlete. We are really looking at the posterior chain or the back of their body
Mm.
strengthening. If you have a trainer as a runner who's telling you to do endless squats, run. You do not need endless squats as a runner. In fact, you're going to just, contribute to that stretched hamstring that's weak and the quads that are super tight. You're running when you start, you're running in this hunched over posture, shoulders turned, hips are already
Yeah.
turned forward. You're already in a terrible stride and looking at something like patellar tendonitis, T-band syndrome,
Mm.
low back pain, upper back pain. And so the strength and conditioning is incredibly simple, but it is strategic. And I do combine both the elements of body composition change because every runner still wants to look good. To say that they don't is we're doing a disservice to runners by saying that they can't change their body composition. Personally, as a runner who wants to do that,
Yeah, of course.
and looking at the injury prevention too, very strategic. I know you love the deadlift. I do too.
Yeah, right. Posterior work. I love it. So I want to dig in a little bit on the simple but strategic strength and conditioning, squats and then back work. So it makes sense to me having a strong core and back for anything, anything in life, honestly, including like we sit all day and that's not good for that. And it kind of like in my mind, complements the front side of the body as well and kind of gives you that stable base. But well, what is it about squats? So I've heard people who are kind of lay people who don't really understand running say, well, it's all about the strength to weight ratio and you need as much power as possible. So of course you want to have nice, big, strong legs. Maybe for sprinters, but we're talking about endurance sports, right? Is there a difference there that I just assumed? And then what do you do for that power, that ratio, if it is even relevant?
Yeah, I think where we're getting power is just in functional lifting exercises.
Okay.
So looking at things like kettlebell swings, getting the glutes. But here's the thing, when we're looking at recreational runners in particular, a lot of them have never been, first of all, rehabbed when we're women, the core. So we have to look at pelvic floor and core health, ensure we're not doing anything to exacerbate, the diastasis recti or the separation of the abs that happens with pregnancy. Most of the time, that's not really healed in the first place. So that core being strong, starting with basic deadlifts. I'm not talking about anything complicated, no single leg, because again, if your core is unstable, you had a baby, you're kicking your SI joint out of alignment every time you do a single leg deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing. I went to physical therapy, and that's the first thing they put me through, a single deadlift.
They like the unilateral stuff, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, well, okay. So my history would not allow for this to be a great exercise.
Yeah.
So, it's that great education and a good relationship with a provider that you can benefit from there. But again, we're looking at dynamic functional lifting to be a strong human. Things like bicep curl into overhead press. Let's not separate those. Let's just keep them together. Be time efficient, again, so it fits into real life too, and it's not overwhelming. So meeting the person where they're at first and foremost, running specific, and then looking at their injury history too.
Okay, and you mentioned the quad dominant nature of this. What kind of leg work do you do? Just as an example.
So I would look at deadlifting. I would look at doing some clam exercises, hip bridges,
Okay.
And doing hip bridges with some weights. So you have a counter pressure, so glutes actually fire. What else do we do? We would do single leg exercises for core in particular, maybe even some getting that neuromuscular pattern. So getting the leg to switch, single leg stance. Again, but that's not super weighted when we have things like core concerns.
Sure, understood. And again, you're touching on the idea that you have to make some trade-offs, right? We have to make trade-offs depending on our goal. If you want to fit endurance sports in there and body composition and injury prevention, they all have to work, and nothing's going to be like extremely dominant. So let's look at that a little bit. So you mentioned body composition. How do you fit that in? Does it is it more of a natural thing where you say, look, if we get the nutrition dialed in and we are working out anyway for our training, you're probably going to get pretty much the physique you want? Or is there specific periods where you focus on that?
Yes. So with an endurance athlete, or even a recreational runner, sometimes we say endurance athlete and recreational runners don't think that applies to them, but I'm talking about recreational runners. We're looking at a strategic layout of their next couple months. So, okay, do we have a race coming up? Let's focus on performance there. Okay, do we have an injury currently? Let's focus on rehabilitation first and foremost. Let's go into body composition. A lot of times, we come in with both goals. I want to run my best and I want to lose weight. So we can work in strategic weight loss days, but strength training. I always say strength training is more important than your running. Why? Because running, you're going to do it. But strength training is your testosterone, your ability to build muscle, your metabolism. The way you keep weight off is by having muscle, your metabolic powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So
couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned you had osteoporosis at, I think, 33. And that your story is kind of why you do this, like your mission, right? How did you start down this path when we talk about the things you used to do, right? Like training fasted. I think you've mentioned like too much caffeine and under fueling, gut health, all that. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it really clicked for me when I believe it was one of the press releases that came out for American College of Sports Medicine that said Louise Valentine can see for the perimenopausal endurance athlete what's coming for them that they don't even know is coming for them. I've lived through it all. I've reversed it. And some women look at me and they're like, oh, you're young. And I'm like, but I've lived through the perimenopausal woman's nightmare. You don't want cancer. You don't want osteoporosis. You don't want to gain weight. You want to look, feel, and perform your best. You don't want injuries. Been there, done that, all the wrong things. So now here on the other side, it's nice to have this mission to ensure that women don't end up like me, and then teaching them the simple strategies to prevent it, because it's so incredibly simplistic. But we do need to your point, the gut health. That is honestly one of the root causes of why I ended up with osteoporosis, this immunocompromised youth where I had way too many probiotics. I was eating well, I was doing all the things, but if your gut health is not there, it doesn't matter how well you eat, your body will not absorb it. So
interesting. You said too many probiotics. So how did you discover that?
Too many, not probiotics, antibiotics.
Now it makes sense. Okay. I was going to say it's good, right, to have probiotics.
Yeah.
Too many antibiotics. Okay. Go a little bit more into gut health. Like how much of that do you get into, again, the science of it, even though we know at the end of the day that we're not trying to overwhelm people with science so much as like, what do we do about it?
Yes. And this was one where my diagnosis was one that we don't really study much in the US. So I had to go into like the Chinese science and pretty much figure out my own gut health and what was wrong with me and how to restore it. I was told I would have cancer in 4 years, and instead I reversed the condition with a nutrition and lifestyle approach. So if your doctor ever tells you something's impossible, just know, do your research first and foremost. But I did not have good gut health my entire life, and it manifested in the oddest of ways. And I do see a lot of women, and even some of the men that I coach, having a lot of these gut health struggles. It's these weird symptoms. It's like, I tested allergic to the world. I'm allergic to everything. Or I have psoriasis, or these seasonal allergies. I have weird nerve pain. I can't lose weight no matter how hard I try. So I do have gut health education in my program, because I'd be remiss if I didn't teach women how to protect their gut health too. It's health and performance starts in the gut.
Yeah. And I think there is confusion on that topic because it is so new. Like you said, there wasn't really even a Western medicine reference recently, and it's just starting to make waves. Okay. What about, so you've talked about weight loss a few times, and I'm bringing this up more with guests, and what do you think of the phrase weight loss? So I use the phrase fat loss more often now. And maybe it's semantics, but what do you think of that given given the general perception people have of weight loss as an energy restriction and all the other things we talked about.
Yeah. And so in terms of weight loss itself, I think that, it's hard because automatically I think we think of dieting
Mm-hmm.
and we think of restriction. And that is where it's nourishing our body. I just wish it was nourishing your body. And I've also seen the language, an overnourished individual as someone who's gaining weight. And I would say, no,
Oh,
that's
interesting.
an
Yeah.
undernourished individual because their body does not have the nutrition if they're
Yeah.
eating a bunch of, processed foods as well. So sometimes the language is very interesting. And,
Yeah.
even looking at hormonal changes, they can be mitigated. And I don't even think people realize that. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, these hormonal changes that just happen in our body, they just happen. We can take control of them and they don't have to happen as fast as they say they have to.
That's a very good principle you just alluded to, because you can extend that to everything else in our body. Assume that nothing is fixed. Right? Assume that nothing at all, nothing is fixed. Your strength, your muscle, your capability to run races and power, your hormones. Just assume nothing is. Epigenetics, you mentioned it before,
Mhm.
till the day you die, right? Like just if you're 75 and just getting started, I'm not saying everything applies. There's certain things, right, when you go through menopause and whatnot, but I think that's a good principle. What is the industry missing out on when it comes to female endurance athletes? Like, what are other coaches and nutrition experts not acknowledging or talking about, or maybe they're perpetuating the commonly held myths, which is a very common thing?
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I would say there's two, and one is the strength and conditioning side. To say that runners can do body weight exercises and protect themselves from injury, 35 and beyond, it's not how our physiology works. We need, in particular, to overload the muscles with heavier weights. Lack of estrogen, it's decreasing. It impacts our body's ability to use carbs and protein to build the muscle. So we have to get the nutrition side right. But we need to lift heavy. And it's amazing when I have women who are these yogis and they're trying so hard to do bar and all of these, physical therapy exercises, and they never get anywhere seeing body composition changes or preventing injury because they're not lifting heavy enough. They start to
Mhm.
lift simplistically and heavy enough, and their body changes. They're running up hills with ease. They're injury free. Shoulder pain goes away. Hip pain
Mhm.
goes away. That's just one of my client stories. It's like,
It's true. It is so true. All those things. Yeah. And many people find it counterintuitive. Like, oh, I have knee issues, so I don't squat. Well, maybe if you squat, you'll help your knee. We kind of know this. I mean, I've had sort of a hip labral tear for a couple of years, but when I squat, it feels great. So it's one of those weird things. When you talk about lifting heavy, because that's always music to my ears, what does that mean? And let's be very specific. If someone's listening and they're not doing that yet, and they just want to start working out tomorrow and they want to just randomly go into the gym and try something to kind of get a feel for that, what would you suggest?
yeah, I would say start with an exercise that you're comfortable with, that you have good form. So if you're not with a certified professional who can help you ensure that your form is correct, start with an exercise you're comfortable with and have good form. Lifting heavy enough, in particular, female 35 and over, is looking at 10 reps or less. In my personal experience and per science, and some of the female specific science out there, that's a great place to aim for. What does that mean? It means that by the time you get to that 10th rep, you cannot lift another. Maybe you could get one more, but if you can get 13, 14, 15, I call that essentially physical therapy
Mm-hmm.
exercise. You are getting a beautiful range of motion, which is great, but you're not going to build lean muscle or prevent injuries very effectively. Also, I would rather have you pick up a weight and get 5 great reps than get 15.
Mm-hmm.
So let that sink in. And not only that, how much shorter does your workout become?
Yes.
It's
It's
so
easier in a way.
neck workout for 15 to 20 minutes, and I see these great changes in my body. It just blows people's mind of like, your life is going to change for forever. You're
That
cutting
is true.
cardio, you're lifting more efficiently. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you save time, longer rest periods. It's I always call it the lazy person's way to get fit is lifting.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I'm doing physical therapy for my shoulder and it's all 15 reps, 5-second holds. And it's like, not that it's torture. I'm glad I'm doing it because if it's a lot of isometrics, but I'm like, if I had to do this with weights regularly, I could see why people would give up. Like people give up on their gym routines because they're doing a lot of reps. So what you just said is a good point. If you're only doing 6 reps, 8 reps, 10, whatever, they're really hard. You're going to get that great feel, not necessarily a pump. You don't always chase that. You don't always chase soreness, but just like feel like you push some strong weights around. It's empowering and it takes less time. So why not?
Yes. And that
Yeah.
feeling too, that you're strong.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we need to feel
Yes.
35 and over. We need to remember how incredibly strong we are, how incredibly athletic we are. We can do that at any age. And the fact that
Mhm.
people tell us that we can't, that it's a story of burned out, bloated, and broken, we need to rewrite it.
For sure. You could be strong at any age. I don't care if you're, 65, you never lifted weight, go do it. Louise is talking about with a move that you're comfortable with, that you can have good form. And if you're not comfortable, and that's okay, find somebody that can help you get comfortable. A lot of options out there, including Louise. And I do want to ask this question. I don't know if I had this in the list back when we first met, but it's the one I always ask. And that is there a question you wish I had asked? And what is your answer?
I think the best question that no one's asking, as can and are women endurance athletes putting the pedal to the metal and exacerbating perimenopause symptoms, having it hit them earlier than it should. And I think if we continue to train as we have in the past, if we continue to have these hard, high volume training cycles for runners, you will. And I know because that's my story. So now I'm rewriting it. I'm helping other women rewrite it, and it doesn't have to be complicated. So if you're looking for that simplistic side, science-based, cutting edge, that is where my zone of genius is in this world.
I love it. So yeah, if what worked in the past, what people think worked in the past isn't what's going to work. The cutting edge, simple strategies that Louise teaches will definitely work. And I totally believe it because it's proof is in the pudding in her actions and accolades. Where can people learn more about you, Louise?
You can find me at breakingthroughwellness.com. I've got a blog, videos, newsletter tips, free resources, and a great community of women that I do coach, as well as other, mini courses and offers. So I just encourage women to start getting informed and find the practitioner that resonates with you. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's Dr. Stacy Sims, other leaders in the field. Mm-hmm. Go and get yourself educated, find what works best for you, and then own it. Don't let anybody else tell you that there's only one way. There's many ways.
Many ways. Own it. And if they're listening to this podcast, they definitely want to get educated. So I put those links in the show notes so the listeners can find you, Louise. It's great to have you back on again. I learned a lot as always, and I'm sure the listener did as well. And they have some great information to run with. Yes. So thank you so much.